welcome back to an exciting, hot off the presses episode of the Northern Steel Podcast. I'm your host, Dominic. With me as always is mi hermano, Chris Paskowski.
What up, what up?
Welcome to episode 47, the Mel Blunt episode, and I'm going to be blunt with you. I'm excited. What about you, Chris?
Oh, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling fresh. We're getting one step closer to that draft, baby.
I'm going to need a couple blunts to calm down, or I need blunt trauma to the head. Either way, I'm ready for today's episode. Speaking of hot off the presses, for today's episode, Steelers made a trade today, baby. We're finally on top of the news. The Steelers, out of nowhere, in the afternoon, traded for Allen Robinson, wide receiver from the Rams.
And you know what this means? It means Mitch Trubisky's getting that starting job right back.
Welcome back, Mitch. Welcome back.
Thanks. Money Mitch.
What it actually means is you can scratch wide receiver off the draft board, in my opinion. But the Steelers picked up Allen Robinson in a trade with the Rams. Allen Robinson having a couple down years back-to-back, but still a solid receiver, especially a solid slot receiver, a solid number 3 receiver. And you might be thinking, oh man, did the Steelers get fleeced? Did they do a bad deal to get a washed Allen Robinson? Please, this is Omar Khan we're talking about. This is the con artist, baby. He fleeces you. You don't fleece him. He fleeced the Rams. He swapped seventh round picks, moved down 14 or 16 spots. I don't remember. Doesn't matter. It's a 7th round pick to get Allen Robinson. Also made the Rams pay $10 million of his $15 million guaranteed contract signing this year. So Steelers basically get him on a 1-year rental for $5 million.
Not a bad gig. Not a bad trade at all. I really liked it, to be quite honest with you.
And let me ask you, Chris, do you know how many wide receivers the Steelers could have drafted in the 7th round that would be as good as Allen Robinson is?
It's unknown, but probably none, because Allen Robinson is that dog, or at least he used to be.
You're absolutely correct. It is none. Allen, my computer is going so slow. Allen Robinson is coming over. He's played a lot of snaps in the slot. Like every year, I think the lowest amount was probably 38 to 40% in the slot. But he plays a lot in the slot. He can play on the outside. He is 6'3". That makes the Steelers having 3 6'3" or taller targets in the red zone. He can. I think he's got really good jump ball ability, better than Claypool had. I know a lot of Bears fans are trying to laugh and say, "Oh, you got Allen Robinson, our washed-up player. When you traded us Claypool, you're trying to make up for Allen Robinson." Look, man, you guys give us Claypool for the 32nd overall pick. We got Allen Robinson for $5 million, which in NFL terms is $5. Let's be real.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Allen Robinson has a lot of promise. You know, to get him for a 7th round pick, I think he still has some sure hands. And honestly, it could be a lot of the system. I mean, I remember seeing some memes back in the day of like, oh, Allen Robinson is so bad. And then you see Mitch overthrow him by like 15 feet. And then you're like, yeah, he is so bad. Like, I can't believe he didn't catch that or whatever. But no, I'm kind of excited. It's cool to get a veteran guy onto the field with our wide receiver group, especially since they're so young. And we were just talking about this. Veteran is one thing. He's 9 years into the league, but he came into the league at 20. So he's only 29 years old, still under 30. So he still brings that young athleticism to him, but definitely a veteran presence to have in our young wide receiver group.
Now, also Allen Robinson, this may be the best quarterback he's ever played with in Kenny Pickett. Now, Matthew Stafford is a great quarterback, but last year he had the injury. That was his first year with Matthew Stafford. So I'm not really counting that as a quarterback. He's playing with an injured elbow hurt Matthew Stafford, which doesn't really count. But I think this might be the best quarterback that he's ever played with in Kenny Pickett. And not to mention that for the Bears, he was their number one. For the Rams, he was signed on to be their number 2. And for us, he's there to be number 3. A lot less pressure. People were laughing and saying that he's gotten under 600 yards the past 2 years. But he doesn't need to get over 600 yards. If he had 600 yards and 6 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns, that's a successful season as a number 3, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, hopefully he doesn't fill in that Claypool route and just gets handed jet sweeps all the time. But, it's Matt Canada's offense, so we never know what we're going to get out of it.
That is the thing. It's you look at this offense on paper with now I think our wide receiver group is set. I doubt we draft one now with Kevin Austin coming back, and you and I and a lot of people still have high hopes for him. So Kevin Austin's going to come back. Hello, advertisement. And on paper, the offense looks like it's going to be fairly good. But then you always got to remember Matt Canada.
And who knows? Canada. I mean, I know we talked about this before, but a lot of people are speculating that Matt Canada, dwindled down the playbook a little bit to kind of give Kenny Pickett an easier approach to his first NFL season. However, Mitch was a veteran, and then I felt like he was running the exact same plays, really didn't have a lot of, good play calling when he was in it either. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully we can make that year 2 leap. I know year 3 for Matt Canada, but hey, third time's the charm, right? Let's see if Canada can pull it off.
Hopes are low, but the bar's low. So there's only one way to go, and that's up. Gotta go up.
Amen, brother.
Before we jump into our picks or our scouting report this week on defensive tackles, let's talk about a little Steelers rumor. Usually I like to talk about NFL news. There wasn't anything I cared about besides the Allen Robinson trade today. Let's talk about some NFL news. Some NFL news for Steelers news is a rumor that Chris and I want to talk about because we want to tell you guys to open up your mind, take out your brain, unsmooth it, wrinkle it back up, and put it back to where it goes in your head, where that empty hot air space is. And that is the excitement over potentially trading up in the draft for Jalen Carter. Chris is so disgusted he can't even be here to see this. This idea is so asinine. Gross. This idea is asinine. If you truly want Jalen Carter, wake up, because I think he's going to be a bust. I know everyone says he's a generational talent. I don't see it. Let's look at the facts, people. He is in legal trouble over the drag race that killed his teammate and what was her role? Academic advisor, I think, of whatever her role was. I'm sorry, I don't know. Rest in peace. But he was in trouble with involving that race that killed those 2 people. He's got legal issues there. He also, on his pro day in Georgia, I don't know why people forget this thought, because everyone talks about, we can fix his character issues. Mike Tomlin can handle that. Put that aside. He showed up to his pro day out of shape, overweight, did half the workouts, ran out of stamina, looked terrible, and then had the audacity, Chris, to tell teams that he's only visiting the top 10 of the draft because he knows he's still going to go top 10. Do you want that kind of player on the Steelers?
No, absolutely not. I don't. I mean, it's one thing. I feel like we finally got cleared of all the drama on our team. It took a while, but we finally feel like we're in a place where drama's behind us and we're just kind of working on creating this new environment in Pittsburgh, right? And then you have a guy like Jalen Carter, who I'll be honest, I don't know if he's a product of Georgia's incredible defense or if he's actually that good of a playmaker. To me, the stats don't really show up on there. And watching a little bit of film, like, yeah, he can be disruptive, but nothing really pops out to me as like worthy of trading up for? And then also talk about the ego on this guy, aside from all the legal stuff and exactly like you were saying, where it's like, hey, if you're not a top 10 pick, don't even bother inviting me to a pre-draft visit or anything like that. Who owes you this? Like, you haven't earned anything yet, right? Like, I don't care how much money the NCAA has paid you or whatever, but like, until you get out there and you actually like make a name for yourself, you kind of got to put up or shut up realistically. So, and realistically, people live their entire lives to just like have that moment of getting drafted. And this guy's like, if it's not top 10, it ain't for me. Grow up. Okay. This is a big thing. It's a big deal. You gotta, it's more than just football, and it's more than just you gotta grow up there a little bit. And I don't want it. I think a lot of people are putting too much hype around Jalen Carter and seeing all these horrible, you know who you are, these horrible mock drafts being like, oh, well, we could trade up. We could get rid of all of our picks for him and Paris Johnson. Well, yeah, Paris Johnson sounds fine. But when I actually saw someone post, like, what would you do if we traded all 7 of our picks just to get Jalen Carter and Paris Johnson? I threw up in my mouth a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean a lot of it. And people were like, yeah, that's a great idea. We should totally do that. I'm all for it. It'll fix everything. What will it fix? What?
Nothing.
Well, nothing. It'll keep our families away from the field because no one wants to hang out with Jalen Carter.
Put up road signs, miles per hour, in big bold letters, telling them to slow down. Look, you might think that Chris and I are just hating on Jalen Carter. There's a huge difference, okay? Especially when you think about another Georgia player in George Pickens last year, and they talked about his off-the-field issues. George Pickens didn't have off-the-field issues. He had on-the-field issues. He was a bully. He beat people up on the field. In every interview George Pickens did last year, he was thoughtful, he was kind, just like he is now in his interviews. But when he's on the field, he turns it on. Jalen Carter is a douche. and he's douchey off the field too. And let me tell you something. I will go on a hot take right now for anybody who dares to listen to this podcast that Jalen Carter will be a bust. Because I think he's a product of the defense around him. Just like I could not fathom and understand why Trayvon Walker was the first pick last year. You know how well Trayvon Walker did last year? You don't. Do you remember that he was the number 1 pick? You don't. He didn't do anything. He was a product of the Georgia's defensive line with Jordan Davis and the other dude that went to Green Bay. Can't even tell you his name. Doesn't matter.
And listen, if he does well, then good for him. But like, I'm less than impressed by him as a player and as a person. So move along. I'll take what I can get at pick 17, and if we do trade up, I'll take a top-rated cornerback or lineman at that number 9 if that's a possibility. So
this is like the Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett thing all over again. And for all of you who wanted Malik Willis last year and you want Jalen Carter now, you do not know ball. That has been ranting with Dominic and Chris. Moving on to some actual defensive tackles I could care about. Let's talk about scouting some potential rookies for the Steelers in the defensive tackle department.
Let's do it.
First up, I got Brian Brzee out of Clemson. Brian Brzee, let me tell you something. Brian Brzee's a big old lad. Okay?
Easy, breezy, beautiful. Brian.
Only turn these highlights and you can be amazed by Brian Brzee. He is 6'5", 305 pounds. He had 15 tackles last year, 3.5 sacks, 13 tackles the year before that, 1.5 sack, 23 tackles, 4 sacks. You might be thinking to yourself, those numbers are not very good. Well, Brian Brzee has dealt with a lot of adversity. He's had a torn ACL, he had a kidney infection, and he also lost, his sister passed away recently in college too. So he's dealt with a lot of
Very sad.
adversity, but he has a skill set, and I think on the right team, the Steelers could be that team. You could see his potential really rise up. I think watching the highlights, he has really, really good closing speed. He's got pretty decent tackle shedding. He's able to recognize the play, but when he gets by there and he sees where the play is going, he closes on that quick. His size and stature honestly reminds me of Stephon Tuitt. And, wouldn't mind Stephon Tuitt again, wherever he may be now. Brian Brzee, his production score was 74 at the combine, athleticism score 76, total score 77, which is fourth of all the defensive tackles. His 40-yard dash time was a 4.86. Pretty slow, but I think his acceleration's fast, because I'm telling you, I think he's really got good acceleration. He really has the speed to recognize what's going on, but he's definitely not going to run you down at all. See, I think it's kind of fast right there in that highlight. That's just me.
Absolutely.
Anyways, he's burly but athletic. Interior tackle, plays a strong desire to get past the man in front of him. Brzee rarely gets caught up in long blocking engagements and possesses a deep anchor to battle double teams. He's broad. He plays instinctive football. He possesses a blocking scheme, attacks with smart hands, takes long strides, can withstand double teams, plays past the blocker, maintains his hits, pocket pusher when he gets the jump. His weaknesses is his clutch production, does not jump off the page. We talked about that. Will slip block and lose gap leverage. Range as tackle maker is average. That's coaching. Rush approach is linear and unsophisticated. That's coaching. Unable to flip hips and get skinny around the edge. That's coaching. And suffered an ACL tear and had shoulder surgery in January 2022. So he's been on the injury block. He might be injury prone, which could be a concern. That's why I know a lot of people have him ranked as like a top 15, even a first round talent. I don't know. I can't really say I would be happy at 17. I would say the only way I'd be happy taking Brian Brzee, if it has to be the first round, is if they trade back to the upper 20s, or if they find their offensive tackle at 17 and they decide to skip cornerback and they take him at 32. I think that's the only way I'm going to be happy with a Brian Brzee, but he is definitely a skilled player.
No, I totally agree with you. And that's just, it's not really a breezy thing. It's more of at least for me, just a defensive tackle aspect. There's not really a defensive tackle out there that screams out first round pick, I guess, at least not 17 for me personally. And I think there's just a lot of different positional groups that the Steelers need desperately more than a defensive tackle. Obviously, a stud defensive tackle would help tremendously. That line is old. It's probably the oldest of our entire team with Cam, Ogunjobi, and those guys. And so it'd be nice to get. Is ancient.
Yeah, I don't think he even got resigned. So I think our defensive. The thing is, defensive tackle actually is a pretty high. What's the word I'm looking for? Necessity, I guess, for the draft or for this team. I would say, because I think our defensive tackle right now is a mixture between Montravius Adams, Brandon Fehoko, and Armand Watts, who we just picked up recently too. It's not really a solid starter there at all.
No, I could see us definitely getting a defensive tackle in the draft. I just, probably looking at like the middle picks, in my opinion.
Well, here's one right here. I don't know if he'll last to 49, but that's kind of where he could go. That is Mazi Smith from Michigan. Let's take a look at Mazi Smith, shall we?
Let's do it. You were pretty excited about Mr. Mazi Smith earlier today, so I've been saving for this live reaction.
Well, keep your hopes at a solid level for a defensive tackle. But as I go through the stats, we'll kind of talk about him. Mazi Smith, he's 6'3", 337 pounds. He had 49 tackles last year with 1 sack, 1 forced fumble. 37 tackles the year before that, and then 3 tackles in 2020. Must not have played a lot there or had an injury. Here's the thing with Mazi Smith. When you watch his highlight tapes, I think he's a very good run stopper. And as far as a pass rusher, he's not going to collect the sacks. I don't think, yeah, exactly. He's got 1 sack last year. He's not really a sack kind of guy, but I think he pushes the pocket. I think he's a really good pocket pusher. He's able to short up that line. He's not getting pushed backwards often, at least in these highlights. And when he's pushing the pocket, he's pushing it towards, let's say he's on the Steelers, he's pushing it towards TJ or Alex Highsmith or Cam Hayward. And if he's not getting the sack, if you're pushing the quarterback towards any of those guys, they're cleaning it up for sure. A guy who can plug the hole and push the pocket around is not a bad player for the Steelers at all with the talent they have rushing the ball anyways. It's a very solid spot. Plus his run defense, I think, is very, very solid. I think he's got good eyes for finding the hole on the run defense. His production score was 69. Athleticism score was 90, which was second. And total score is 77, which is ranked third.
90 is number 2? I feel like that's the highest production score I've heard.
Well, I feel like there's one defensive tackle we're not talking about, and it's Kalijah Cansey. And I wonder if he's one, potentially. We're not talking about Kalijah Cansey because I read that he might not fit our scheme. I think he's more of a 4-3 kind of guy. But regardless, his NFL comparison is Don Terry Poe. Don Terry Poe was a very solid defensive tackle in the NFL for a very long time, so I'll take that, especially when he went to the Pro Bowl and whatnot. Let's talk about his strengths here for Mazi Smith. Possesses rare combination of size and athleticism. He's bendy and stout. Power to punch and lift the blocker. Plays with a lively feet. Able to slide, swim, seize the gap. That's what I'm talking about. I think he can close the gap really, really well, especially according to these highlights. He yanks and pulls guards, and his foot quickness. He's very agile. He's very quick. He doesn't make many plays behind the line of scrimmage, which is kind of evident here. He's able to kind of stay at the line of scrimmage, or maybe a little yards past it. Doesn't make a lot of line, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing when the defensive line for the rest of the Pittsburgh Steelers is very good. His motor runs out of gas when tempo heats up. I mean, that's normal, but look, man, a defensive tackle in the NFL is not playing every down. I'm going to tell you that right now. So that doesn't really concern me, to be honest. Plus, we have 3 other defensive tackles who can kind of go in between. So that's not really a concern of mine at all. Slow reaction to movement gets him sealed. Struggled against Iowa's zone scheme attack. You definitely have to work on that for sure. Surprising lack of anchor consistency and unlikely to see many passing downs as a pro. Just how we talked about, but I disagree. They're saying that because he's not a good pass rusher. But like I said, if he can push the pocket around and push it towards TJ, Highsmith, or Cam, I think he'll be just fine.
And I liked what I saw realistically. It showed a lot of strength to be able to push those guys back. Very rarely did I see him get pushed back in any of those highlights. And, realistically, as a defensive tackle or nose tackle, all I'm looking for is for you to just be like a stone wall for whether you move forward or I don't want you to move back. If you can just stay your ground or whatever and create that wall, honestly, it kind of forces whoever's running the ball or whatever to move into a different direction. So I really like Mazi Smith from the highlights I saw.
I would say he's... it would be like you always want more picks. You want everyone in the draft. I would say he's pick 49 if you want to take a defensive tackle because he's not going to last till 80. I'm going to tell you that right now. Unless we trade back and acquire more picks between 49 and 80, you're going to have to, if you want him, you're going to have to take him at 49. He's not going at 80. Next up.
Here's my prediction. He's going to be 63. Watch out for the draft. Number 63, Mazi Smith. No, 66. There it is.
I think it's going to be 50.
We'll see. Whoever's closer gets a Kit Kat bar.
Oh, wow. Next up I don't know how to pronounce this. Sakai Ika.
Sakai?
Is what we'll go with.
God, these stats are underwhelming.
well, that's got all the stats so far. That's like a Sakai Ika, huh? Sakai Ika is 6'4", 358. Golly, he's huge, and he looks like it on tape. He had 23 tackles last year, 24 tackles the year before that, 5 tackles in 2020. Must have got hurt because in 2019 he had 18 tackles. Sakai Ika, according to this tape, is kind of similar with Mozzie Smith. It's just not nearly as fast athletic, but he's just a big lad. He's huge. I think he really pushes the pocket with his strength and his weight. He really shoves up that hole. I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking for. I think he gets more tackle for losses than Mozzie Smith does. He definitely pushes behind the line better than Mozzie Smith. But he's just one large individual. And if you're looking for a guy to close up the gap, that's the guy it's going to be. In the combine, though, he did not test that well. So maybe he drops. Who knows? You never know with these things. Production score was 68, which is 9th. Athleticism score was 55, which is 17th. And total score was 63, which is 14. His 40-yard dash was a 5.39. I thought Brian Brzee was slow at a 4.8. This is a 5.39. Good God. But he is humongous. So not really super surprised there. His NFL comparison is Danny Shelton. Makes sense. Danny Shelton is a large mountain of a man as well. His strengths, he slams at a first contact with excellent hip explosion. Initial punch drives through opponent's pads. Good recognition. Will require help to dig him out of gaps. Power and snap quickness. Adequate initial slide. Shoves and clubs blockers' wrists. Above average athleticism for a player of his gigantic size. Oh my God. Weakness, needs to improve technique on taking on double teams. Drops head, taking on block and loses sight of the ball. Gets too far out over feet, causes imbalance. On the ground too often against Oklahoma specifically, I guess. Lacks change of direction and noticeable dip in pocket pressure in 2022 as a pocket passer. Those are all like very valid weaknesses, I feel like. Some coaching, some not. And with his combine score, I know on draft simulators they have him ranked very high, Sakai Ika, like in the 40s as well. But honestly, the way this is kind of looking, I mean, I don't think he'd last to 80, but I could see it. And then that pick 80, that's fine with me. Pick 49, sure. Pick 49, I'll warm myself up to it. At pick 49, I'll make myself happy about it. Pick 80, I'll be definitely okay with.
He's a big dude, that's for sure. And he definitely passes the hair club of sick hair.
He sure does.
Especially for a bigger guy.
That's what I like to see.
We just need Henry Mondo back. That's what I'm saying.
No.
Yeah, you're right.
No, we don't. Any other notes about Sakai, Chris?
Not really. I mean, he's just a plugger, a plugger of holes. That's honestly the best word I could think of. Yeah. He does a good job with it.
It's just a run of the mill defensive tackle.
Yeah. And going back to what I said earlier about like the stats are underwhelming, I just feel like that's what you get with defensive linemen. So I don't mean that with like, wow, they're so bad, because realistically, as long as they force a play, that's what matters. Very rarely do you get defensive linemen up there in like statistics, I feel like.
Especially defensive tackles. The last one you had that was good was Javon Hargrave, but we decided, hey, we don't want to pay him. Although,
why would you? He's only really good.
Right. Couldn't see the future, though. We wanted to pay all that money to Stephon Tuitt, but that's the way it goes.
Well, you know who reminds me of Stephon Tuitt?
No, he does not, but please use a segue.
Well, I was going to say, not my next dude, but I'm going to talk about Keanu Benton. See, Dobby, you have such little faith. You have to just let me finish my sentence. I get it. It's a little scary, but...
You're right. You're right. That's my bad.
Yeah, go for it whenever you're ready. So, next guy we got is Keanu Benton. He is a 6'4", 309 defensive tackle out of the University of Wisconsin. He is a pretty big dude, and he definitely is kind of like that wall that I was talking about when I was watching his highlight tape.
Loudermilk.
Yeah, he is a former teammate with Isaiah Loudermilk. Shout out to that guy and his fantastic hair. But something that really jumped out to me when watching his tape is he's actually pretty quick. He has some good hand movement. He's able to shed some blocks and get around the guys. And that just kind of shows by, oh gosh, his stats. I mean, last year he had 36 total tackles, but 10 of them were accounted for loss. And he had 4.5 sacks. So he definitely knows how to get into the backfield, and he knows how to kind of get off guys and make the play. So he's not the fastest dude in the bunch. He ran a 5.08, so it made me laugh when you said 4.86 for Brian Breezy. Yeah, this dude is molasses.
I think Brian's actually the fastest one. So
yeah, but I was like 4.8 for a big dude, probably 300 pounds. I would take that any day. But yeah, 5.08 for his 40-yard dash, just under 30 for his vert, and a 9.3 broad jump. He was a third-team selection as a senior, recording 35 stops and 4.5 sacks. Basically, his strengths, he's a full-time starter for most of the 4 seasons, so he definitely has a lot of collegiate experience and definitely playing at that front line. He has a stout frame with proportional thickness and excellent length. He uses a lot of brute force to toss blockers out of the way, and he's just able to kind of get in there and make some plays. Some weaknesses of his are he has below average snap quickness into the neutral zone, and he lacks hip flexion for desired base width for the inside reads. And he's really inconsistent corkscrewing his post leg to take on double teams. So, he has some strengths, has some weaknesses. He's definitely a player to watch. I know a lot of people have kind of seen him at that, I don't know, like 80 pick for us as a potential option. Again, I don't know if he'll make it there, but who knows? I don't think he'll be far off from it by any means. He's not like a super big scouting guy. So just look for Keanu Benton. I think you'll definitely see his name come up in day 2, in my opinion. Dom, what are your thoughts on Mr. Keanu?
Yeah, I don't mind his tape. There's some plays where he's just kind of being pushed around and he just kind of ends up there for a fumble recovery or whatever, but he's definitely getting a lot more sacks and more pressure and tackle for losses than any of the other guys we kind of watched recently, or that I went over. I could see, I know the Steelers like him. I could see 49, yeah. But like you said, 80 would be cool. 80 I think I'd be very happy with, because I'd be like, oh, sick, we stole this guy. But I could see 49 Absolutely. If they really like him.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. And even in his combine, his production score is a 70, athleticism 76, and total 71. So he ranks 6th among all defensive tackles in the combine. I think he'll be a pretty good pick, in those middle late rounds.
Totally. I got your next guy loaded up right
now. Before we get started, I make a fool of myself. Is it Gervon or Jervon?
I would say Gervin.
Gervin?
Yeah, that's how I would say it.
There's no I in his name.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say Gervon. I would say Gervin. Gervin Dexter. Gervon?
No, I like Gervon.
Could be that.
Because he reminds me of Javon Hargrave.
Just say Dexter. Dexter's Lab.
That's fair. So coming up next is Dexter's Laboratory. We got the Gervin, Dexter Sr., coming out of the Florida as a defensive tackle. He is 6'6", Dom. So he's a tall dude. And he better get some damn pass deflections, because my God, there's no way you have to really jump and then throw the ball to get it over this dude. He's a behemoth.
There's one right there.
310 pounds. He is a little bit faster. He ran a 4.88 40-yard dash, a 31 vert, and a 9.2 broad jump. He played just 2 years of football at Lake Wales High School in Florida, but he accumulated 18 sacks as a senior playing there, and that's kind of giving him his, a scholarship to go kind of play wherever he wanted, but he chose Florida. And during his time there, he, I'd say, made a pretty good name for himself. Last 2 seasons as a defensive tackle, he put up 50 plus total tackles, which you really don't see a whole lot of. I feel like hitting that 50 mark, especially in college when you only have 13 games to play. So he definitely gets himself involved in the play. He's a big body dude. You have to, like I said, buy a ladder, climb up it, and throw the ball to get it over this dude. Four tackles for loss and 2 sacks. And that's just kind of been his MO from day one in Florida in 2020. He's just kind of been in there getting tackles and not really getting moved. I remember watching some of his tape, and again, a dude who likes to get in and kind of is just right there to getting that sack. So I know it said like 2.5 sacks or something like that, but most of these highlights, you'll see it. He is a pretty disruptive guy, and it leads to a lot of passing completions or possible turnovers in that backfield, and that's pretty huge. You want to get that quarterback uncomfortable, and I think that's exactly what he does. So I think his pass rushing is pretty excellent. His run blocking isn't bad either. He doesn't really push guys. I'd say he's just more of that brick wall, and he's really good at, like, when a runner comes past into the hole or the gap that's created, he has the strength to put his arm out and really get that ball carrier and bring him down. And I think that's, kind of how he gets a lot of his tackles. He's strong. He has a wide base, and he knows how to use it for sure. So his combine score it was all right. I mean, his production was a 69, athleticism as a 70, total score as a 69. So he's a A+ in my book. But that put him as a number 8 of all defensive tackles in the combine. Not too bad. His strengths, he has NFL ready frame with size to entice. Yeah, no shit. He's 6'6". Like, that's effing massive. Sometimes you read these and you're like, yeah, I get it. He's able to stay square to the line and mind his gap. He has 2 gapping qualities to build on. He slides through gaps with his upper body strength, and his just size is just unbelievable. So it sounds like he has an easy transition from bull rush to swim as a rusher, which is pretty huge. And I think that's where he got a lot of his close sacks on those plays and was able to cause that disruption. So I think he's definitely a good player. Someone I'd probably rank a little bit higher on my list of defensive tackles. The weaknesses that he has is just slow getting off of the ball. He lacks a little bit of that explosive first contact as a bull rusher. But you know what? We have Cam Hayward for that. So you just kind of have the 1-2 punch. He's just a little more timid, not really, bowling guys over, but he allows run blockers to kind of take action into him, which isn't the best either. Also, this makes me laugh because it just sounds kind of dirty, but it says double teams take him for a ride. Take that however you want to. Gervin Dexter Sr., GDS. Look for him. I could see him 49 realistically, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah, his skill set, I was actually going to say the same thing. His skill set and his highlight tape, I actually am surprised. I could see him 49 too. But I've seen a lot of things where he's ranked lower than that. You know what his tape and Keanu Benton's tape remind me of is a defense around them that is swarming the quarterback, and they're able to capitalize on that chaos of the pocket moving around, especially in Gervin Dexter's highlight tape. He's able to capitalize on that pocket just going crazy because of everyone who's rushing and they're rushing well. That reminds me of the Steelers. You got TJ, Highsmith. How much more do I have to say it? You got those 3 guys right up to the quarterback, and they're pushing the pocket around. You're going to get your hits in for sure. So, yeah, 80, I'd be happy with 80. I can see 49 too, but 80 I'd be happy with for sure.
I think 80 would be fantastic if we got him at 80. That'd be like, why'd you wait so long? This dude just literally a tank. Like 6'6", are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's gross.
If defensive tackle doesn't work out, let's put him on the offensive line. Like, for real.
Seriously. All right, and the last guy who you looked up an hour ago?
4 seconds ago? Yeah, seriously. Yeah. So for you all listening out there, this is our in-depth analysis of Mr. Jaquelin Roy. Makes me think of that Key and Peele skit, Jaquelin. And,
Roy.
LSU. And that's how I'm going to refer to him if we draft this guy. But I'm going to do a little live reaction here. I don't even think he's involved in this first play, to be honest with you. So it's kind of a waste of time. But while you're watching, I will just kind of talk over his size and build. So he's a defensive tackle out of LSU. He is 6'3", 305 pounds. So he's a big, beefy guy. He did not participate in the 40, so I have no idea how fast he is. But he had a production score of a 72, which is fourth, athleticism score of a 56, and then a total score of 69, which put him 10th among all defensive tackles. Basically, for looking at his player bio, he started 12 of the 13 appearances in 2022. He had 49 tackles with 3.5 for loss. So he's getting up there in the tackles. He gets involved in the plays, and what more can you really ask for from a guy? Let's see here. So some of his strengths: he can play unusually high snap total for an interior defensive lineman. At first step and first hands are quick. Gains instant arm extension with powerful punch. So it looks like strength seems to be a strength of his. Wow, nice. That was horrible.
Good vocab.
Yeah, thanks. He has a good lateral agility, which is pretty nice. Maybe being able to get around some blockers, and he's able to slide quickly. And it says slap and slip around a block. However you want to put that imagery into your head.
Very dirty today.
I do. Listen, I'm just giving the people what they want, realistically. But some weaknesses: he was only a 1-season starter at LSU. He plays very upright with his swim counter, so I feel like he doesn't really get through a lot with that swim move, but maybe that's something that can be very coached. He can't consistently anchor as deeply as teams might like, and will give ground to drive blockers with leverage. So, that's Jaquelin Roy. I don't even know if highlights. Highlights aren't going on still because I think there's like a minute of that. But I hit no disrespect. No disrespect to Mr. Roy. I feel like he'll be probably a later draft pick, maybe like a 5 or a 6. In my opinion, from what I've seen and read.
Yeah, so I watched all the highlights. There were definitely some moments where he had some very good block shedding, but very often he wasn't pushing the pile was pushing him. He is there to plug a hole, but he's not really getting pushed around pretty well. If you think he's a 5th or 6th and you're the Steelers and you don't have a 5th or 6th because you didn't trade back, and you want Jaquelin Roy, I guess you're gonna take him at 120. Would I be happy with him at 120? Depends on who's on the board. Can't say it would be. Depends on who's on the board. I can't say right now I'd be very pleased, but it depends on who's out there. But if he makes it to the 7th round, hey, welcome to the squad. We just swapped a 7th round pick for later. Welcome to the squad, baby. Make it to the 7th round.
Absolutely.
That is going to do it for our scouting of defensive tackles. And you know what, Chris? That's going to do it for our scouting in general this season.
What? It's already over.
You know, it's crazy. Chris and I discussed today, like, should we do one more podcast before the draft next Thursday? We can do it about wide receivers. And the Steelers said, don't. We're going to trade for Allen Robinson. So we're not going to do wide receivers. We could do edge players, but not even Bud Dupree wants to play on this team, so I'm not going to do that either. So we're going to not have... So here's what we're going to do. We're not going to do a podcast next Wednesday before the draft. What Chris and I are going to do is something we did last year, and I cut it down, is we're going to do a live stream reaction to the first night of the draft. I did this last year. This is a creative idea by me, regardless of if other people are doing it now. This is our idea first. We're going to do a live stream. You can watch with us. You can crack a beer. You can comment. You can leave some jokes. You can be happy. You can be mad. We can feel all the emotions you want to feel the first draft night with us on probably YouTube Live. We'll tweet about actually where it's going to be. And we're going to, that will be our next week's episode, will be a live cut down highlight reaction of the first night of the draft. Chris, it is finally going to be here. Are you excited?
I am pumped. Last year, I was torn away because I had to sit through a thunderstorm at a dang girls lacrosse game. But not this year, dang it. I'm a free bird. Cue Leonard Skinnerd.
Cue it. I won't, but for copyright reasons. But just hum it in your head. Enough with the mock drafts. Enough with the speculations. It's time to see who the Steelers get. Next week, join us Thursday, 7 p.m. Central, except not exactly then because Chris and I are playing a softball game and we'll be running a little late. But join us around that time. Whew. Do you have any final words, Chris?
I actually do have something different.
Oh.
Yeah, don't you dare draft Jalen Carter, Steelers. Do you hear me? I will be so irate if you get this guy because a lot of people will be happy. I won't.
I won't
also,
either.
go Steelers.
All right, go Steelers. You can follow us on all the platforms. You know the dang drill. See you next week for draft time, baby. Peace.
Peace.